Mackenzie.
Hello,
Hi.
hello.
And hello, audience. Wonderful to have all of you here. As you are joining the live stream, go ahead and drop us a note. Let us know that you can see us, that you can hear us. And I'm very curious about where you might be tuning in from today. This is such an exciting topic for linguophiles. Is that it? How would you describe, what word might you use to describe people who are really into languages at Freestyle? What do y'all
Polyglot.
say?
Polyglots
Polyglots.
for
Polyglot.
me. Yes. Go polyglot.
Polyglot. Yep. One of our mottos.
Love that. So yeah, I'm curious to know where everyone will be joining us from today. I imagine that we'll have folks from all corners of the world. Hope that you all can see us and hear us. Drop us a note, let us know. My name's Ashley with the Discover team at Teachable, and I was just mentioning to both Clem and Mackenzie that I'm especially excited about today's event because throughout my experience of teen and adult mixers, icebreakers, whenever the question comes up about what superpower would you most like to have, my answer has always been I wish that I could speak, that I could understand and fluently speak any language in the world. So I'm hoping my that's going to be my goal for this session today, Clem and Mackenzie. Is that we'll just accomplish that in the next hour or so.
Oh, yeah. We've got you covered. Don't worry.
I'm
Perfect.
in the right spot.
Excellent. Okay. And it's looking from Johannesburg and the UK. They can see us and hear us in both of those places. So that is a good sign. Um, Welcome everyone to today's event. We are going to be talking about language acquisition and specifically what it looks like to have science-backed, research-based strategies and tips for learning a new language. And I'm really excited to have this team from Freestyle here because that's essentially they're the experts in that. So before we get started, I have a couple of housekeeping notes to share, but I'm curious to know, Clem, Mackenzie, will you just share a little bit about what makes the approach of the freestyle team and the work that you all do unique? How is it different from the Spanish 101 class that I took in high school where we learned the word for car, cat, library, etc.?
Well, yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of differences that set us apart from traditional institutions. We will cover exactly what kind of sets us apart later on. But if I had to sum it up, we offer an effective, fun, dynamic, and proven language learning model where you're focusing on conversation, on real life language, what people are actually speaking about in day-to-day conversations. And we really, really emphasize speaking. So a lot of learners come to us saying, I've taken Spanish for 4 years and I still feel like a deer in the headlights when I get in front of a native speaker. So we really try and work with people's confidence levels, speaking and using the language in real life so they can connect with other people.
That resonates with me so much because I took Spanish in high school for several years and didn't really have the opportunity to speak it until I worked in a restaurant during college. And it was terrifying. Like I even though I worked with these folks who spoke predominantly Spanish, I was so anxious and nervous about actually trying to say words that I would oftentimes just not do it. And it actually took spending time, like in the kitchen with the native Spanish speakers, just pushing past that and having to converse for me to realize, oh, okay, this is a much better way of of acquiring language skills. And I felt much more comfortable, even though I made lots of mistakes. So I appreciate that. Um, while we are getting started, I'm curious to know from our audience, do you are you yourself a polyglot? Do you have a language learning objective that you're curious to pursue? What is it that's kind of motivated you to join us here today? So we just kind of get a sense of where people are. Couple of quick notes, just so everyone knows, we will have a replay available of this entire event. So if you miss some of the interesting research that you hear from Clem, or some of the strategies that Mackenzie presents, no need to fret. We will be sure to include the full session in an email that we'll send to you afterward. So everyone who's registered will get that. You can also visit the replay here on YouTube. One other note about that, I would encourage you to take a look at the full course, which is pinned to the top of the YouTube comments. And I'm also going to drop that into the chat just so you have access to take a look at not just some of the strategies that we'll be talking about today, but also what else Freestyle offers, and learn more about their approach, their philosophy of language acquisition and integration and communication and building community and speaking with real people about real things. Although I guess maybe there have been times where I have asked somebody on the street where the library is in a Spanish speaking country. So I don't want to knock that. It's a useful sentence to learn. But okay, terrific. So we've got some folks who are teaching Afrikaans online, getting ready to go to Spain, speaking French, and interested in science-backed tips to help teach learners online. That's you all are in the right place. So I'm really excited to turn it over to Team Freestyle. Mackenzie and Clem, over to you.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you all, everybody tuning in today. We love spending time with people who are curious about and love languages and culture. My name is Mackenzie. I'm the marketing manager and also a beginner French learner here at Freestyle. And I am joined today by Dr. Clem Ozel, who's our Director of Education.
Hello, hello, everybody. It's super nice to see folks from all over the world. I'm excited.
And Clem is a native French speaker who has been teaching French for 12 years, Clem?
Indeed, yes, 12 years.
And when she's not teaching, she is overseeing all of the curriculum development, which we do in-house, and all the teacher training here at Freestyle. So we are super excited to be diving deep into some of the most widespread language learning myths together, to share some of the learning science that many language organizations tend to either ignore or just don't know about. And along the way, we are excited to share some science-backed tips for successfully learning a new language. All right. And can you see my screen here, my slides? Perfect. Okay, great. Yes, just a little bit more background info on Freestyle so you know where all of this knowledge is coming from. We are Freestyle Languages. We are based in Austin, Texas, but now online and available to the world. We have learners joining us from all over the place, so it's really exciting to be able to connect with you all globally. Our founder, Elizabeth Mack, started Freestyle after seeing firsthand the issues with the ways our institutions approach second language learning, and we will get to more on that in a bit. But everything we do from our first class about 10 years ago to being completely online today has been driven by our mission to connect people through language, inspired by Nelson Mandela, who said the quote you see on screen. If you speak to a man in a language he understands, it goes to his head. If you speak to a man in his own language, it goes to his heart. All right, so we are such passionate believers in the power of language, not only to connect us to those sharing the globe space with us, but also to enrich our lives in other ways. And if you are tuning in, I want to invite you to share in the chat what's motivating you to learn another language, whether that's travel, professional development, career opportunities, brain benefits, or just for fun. Tell us in the chat, what's motivating you to learn. But since we all know language learning comes with all of these amazing benefits, we should all be fluent in multiple languages, right? Right? Unfortunately, that is not the case, especially in America. If you are tuning in, you might have heard that Americans are woefully monolingual. A study from Pew Research found that only 20% of American K-12 students learn a second language, compared to a median of 92% of students from European countries. So what gives? Why are we not studying languages, and why aren't we having success? We refer to this here at Freestyle as the pedagogy problem. Clem, would you mind defining pedagogy and what we are referring to here by this term?
Pedagogy is just simply the methods used to teach. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be languages, but the way it's done, the way the material is delivered to you at times, and we actually don't do that. We don't deliver the language to you. We make it engaging, but that's key for everything. It's the way the approach is presented to you that is going to make it more or less engaging for you and more or less interesting.
So if you've had a similar experience to, I studied Spanish for 4 years, but I still feel like a total beginner, we want you to know it's not you, it is likely them, the systems, the people who came about the teaching you in the wrong way. Because we do know that language is a uniquely human trait. We all have the innate ability and desire to understand one another and to connect. And the learning science out there proves that it is absolutely possible for adults to learn a new language. We have seen our own students go from complete beginner, no prior experience, all the way to advanced, and you can too, as long as you have the right tools and information, which is what we're here to share with you today. All right, so that's what we're up against. We know language learning adds meaning to life, and we know that it adds opportunities to life, and we know we have the ability to learn within us all. So we are going to continue with this presentation, starting with some claims about language learning, and definitely let us know in the chat what you think about our first claim here, which you can see on screen. It is incredibly difficult to learn a new language after age 7. What do we think about this one? True or false? Clem, what does Freestyle have to say about this claim?
Freestyle has to say that it is false. While children, sure, can be sponges, right? They give the impression that they're just are taking in everything and they're able to spit it out with no problem. They almost sound like native speakers. However, adults also have advantages. We have the ability to self-reflect, to really analyze what we do, and that also can help us learn the language in ways that children can't. So it's just we have different abilities.
And the myth that it is really, really difficult to learn a language after 7 might have originated in this critical period hypothesis, but this hypothesis does not state that it's impossible for adults or even incredibly difficult for adults to learn, because we do have these cognitive advantages. So our tip for this is just stick with it. Just keep on learning. Clem, I know you'd love to speak about the repetition, the importance of repetition in language learning and successful acquisition.
You just have to keep repeating things over and over, whether it's a word, a sentence, a whole class, for it to stick. That's just how it works, right? With repetition comes expertise, the ability to even understand what you're doing yourself. It's foreign to you at first, so there's also that awkward period where you just feel weird about what you're doing. So getting rid of all that takes time and repetition. There's no secret to it.
And the crucial thing here too, and kind of what Ashley was saying earlier about mistakes, not wanting to make a mistake. As adults, we kind of all try to avoid making mistakes. We want to be sure that we're approaching things correctly. But mistakes are a crucial part of the learning process. And that is where the opportunity to self-monitor and to self-correct comes in. So look at mistakes as an opportunity to get better and learn, put those cognitive advantage into play, rather than proof of failure, proof of inability. We like to say that the difference between a successful language learner and a non-successful language learner, both make mistakes, but one learner sticks with it and keeps going and learns from them. So just stick with it. Do not give up. Give yourself a chance to succeed. All right. Claim number 2, proficiency requires 100% accuracy. Clem, could you define proficiency for us in this situation?
Proficiency is your ability to get your message across, to be understood by another person in the target language.
And what do we think about this claim here?
It is false. Proficiency does not require perfection. In fact, perfection is the enemy of proficiency, because if you really try to make everything perfect, that's where you will try a lot less, and therefore progress also a lot less, or not as fast as if you were just trying and putting yourself out there and just speaking as much as you could. So really just go for it. You will make mistakes. Think about your native language as well. You still make mistakes. I assume I still make some in my own. And so it can never be perfect. So with that in mind, just go for it.
Yeah, and here we'd like to explicitly mention Stephen Krashen, who is a second language acquisition specialist, and this theory of the positive affective filter. So there is science that shows when you are stressed out, if you're not having a good time, if you're not enjoying it, a barrier goes up that prevents your learning from actually taking place. So by being stressed out or by comparing yourself to this unachievable perfection level, you could be doing yourself a disservice because your brain is thinking, gosh, if it's not perfect, it's not worth it. You're adding stress to the environment, to the journey, and that's really not going to help your learning in the long run. A key ingredient in all of our classes is fun. You'll see here a little blank, fill in the blank. One of the favorite hashtags we like to use is wine the great fluency builder. We do incorporate that into a lot of our events as well. And the reason behind this is because there are scientific studies that show having one alcoholic beverage can actually help you speak another language better, a second language better. And really, is that because of the booze directly, or is it because you're feeling a little more relaxed? You feel like you can give it a good shot. You're not stressing, essentially. So make sure that whatever you are doing when you're looking at language learning, avoid those tests, avoid what stresses you out, and embrace what makes it fun.
And a lot of people, I can add to this, that really a lot of people come to us with that experience from high school that we were talking about earlier, and the grades that go with it, the exams, the assessments, the fact that it actually needed to be perfect at some point because there were assessments. And those folks really need that reinforcement that no, we're here to communicate, and there's going to be mistakes. Sometimes it's going to be all over the place and hilarious, and we embrace that whole experience. It is never about perfection, at least for us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, sometimes it is hard when you're putting yourself out there. You feel a little self-conscious. I like to think about your own interactions with people who speak a second language. I know personally for me, when I'm speaking with someone who's, we're conversing in English and it's not their native language, if they make a mistake, my instinct is not to go, oh my gosh, you did not put that verb together correctly. I'm always just impressed by what they do know. So give yourself that same courtesy. Take pride in what you have accomplished and what you do know, and don't worry too much about whether or not it's perfect, because the goal is to communicate. And like we said, you can communicate successfully even with some mistakes. They won't prevent you from being understood. All right. What about this claim here? Focus on grammar to really grasp the language. What do we think about this one? Grammar. This one's controversial. Clem, what do we think about this here?
As much as I would like to say yes, because I am a language nerd and I love grammar, this is false. There is only so much that grammar can do to boost your speaking specifically. Really, yeah, there's rules and it's nice to know them and it's a nice safety net. And I have to admit that adults in general really like knowing the rules. However, they also have a hard time moving away from the rules. And a lot of times that actually prevents them from being spontaneous, from actually, putting themselves out there and throwing something for people to respond to. That goes back to the making mistakes, right? Also, we have to keep in mind that sometimes the language changes to the point of having fuzzy rules sometimes, and it's hard to tell whether it's a rule, it's an exception. So moving away from the rules as soon as possible is the way to go, and just going for it.
Mm-hmm. And Stephen Krashen, again, one of our favorite second language acquisition specialists, he actually does a breakdown between language appreciation versus language acquisition. And he says that appreciation is where you know the rules. Acquisition is when you can apply the rules in conversation spontaneously. And of course, that's what we always work with at Freestyles, because we want you to be able to use the language in real life. That's the whole point of learning. And that's where the fun comes in, is connecting with other people.
And it doesn't mean that, so yeah, it doesn't mean that we don't teach grammar, but it's definitely not the focus. The focus is speaking. You will bump into those rules and those things that need to be in the right spot when it's time for you to, but we'll never emphasize those because they're counterproductive and honestly boring. We'd rather be talking to you.
Exactly. And the learning acquisition hypothesis really emphasizes the importance of this face to face negotiation for meaning. And that really is that exchange of messages between two people, trying to understand someone else, interpreting that, and then producing a response. That is where the most successful language learning takes place. And this is really where a lot of traditional schools fall short. As we mentioned, they focus too much on the grammar, the sentence structure, the conjugation charts, and not enough on the speaking. It's the same thing with apps. While they're great for reinforcing certain vocab themes or, that quick test, they do not offer the speaking component, which is absolutely critical if your goal is to be able to use the language in real life. So this is not a surprise. But if you want to boost your speaking, you have to practice your speaking. So, our best tip that we can give you right now is unmute yourself digitally, not digitally, and just practice out loud. Throw it out there. The more you talk, the more comfortable you will feel, the more you'll reinforce these concepts, and the better you'll find you're able to use what you do know in conversation. All right. How about this one? Native speakers know best. Or when it comes to learning a new language, you must learn from a native speaker. What do we think about this one? Clem, let's tell the people what we think about this one.
It is false. Native speakers have advantages going for them. They know the language really well. However, you can really benefit from someone who's gone through the same experience that you're going through, especially if their native language is the same as yours. Then they really know where the tricks are and what usually, people have a hard time grasping because they know both languages well enough. So really, we like both native speakers and non-native speakers to teach our classes because we find them to be very complementary.
And it's so true. We have a lot of learners come to us saying, well, are all of your instructors native teachers? Because there is this myth that if you're going to learn a new language, you have to learn from a native speaker. But what matters most is really the pedagogy, the way they approach the teaching. So not just whether or not are they a native speaker or not, but do they have the tools, the skill set, the training to be able to address your language learning proficiency improvements along the way? Do they know how to avoid lectures? Make sure you're maximizing your time. Do they know how to use guided induction, which is a fancy term we use for kind of sneaking in grammar into conversation? So I like to also say, I'm a native English speaker. Just because I am doesn't mean I could go in front of a classroom and do what our instructors do and take a room full of people who don't know the language and take them to proficiency. So don't limit the pool of people you are interested in learning from. What's really most important is the pedagogy and the model. Clem, this quote here, the find the guide on the side, not the sage on the stage. How do we embody that at Freestyle?
We embody that on every single lesson that we teach by really getting our students to engage with the material. So we don't show up and start delivering those grammar rules that then, oh yeah, we'll end up using toward the end of class. Through authentic material, which we're going to talk about in a minute, through conversation, we bump into those rules and things that are weird about the language. And then we guide students to understand what's going on. But we're not over explaining things. We're not actually explaining what's happening. We get the students to notice and to use the language, and we respond. So it's really through context, through interaction, that they get to discover the weird stuff going on in whatever language they're learning.
So think throwaway traditional lecture style teaching because that's not going to help you advance your speaking. Likewise, you can be in a room with a native speaker and pick up things like the accent and the cultural insight that they do bring, but just sitting and listening to a native speaker is not going to get you where you want to be in terms of speaking. So make sure when you are evaluating your language learning approach, who am I learning from? What is their training? What is their expertise like? And how are they trained to approach my own learning and my own progression? All right. Okay, what about this one? Stick to textbooks over film and TV shows. What do we think? And if you have a favorite TV show or film in your target language, please share in the chat. We love to see what people are watching and explore, and our Netflix recommendation list just keep growing. I might have given this one away here. Clem, what do we think about this claim here?
Oh my goodness, it is false. Please, 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 no more textbooks. Please, all the films, all the TV shows, all the songs, all the fun stuff that speakers in the target culture are engaged with, the stuff that they watch, the stuff that they listen to, because it's representative of what's going on. It's the real stuff. We don't want something that's been sitting on a page for 15 years. It's by definition outdated and not something that is used now, or at least it's running the risk of not being like that. And I think if we surveyed the audience today, we would find out that, yeah, a lot of times the textbooks that we've had in classrooms very much felt like that, like it was like disconnected from reality. Mm-hmm. So focus on, as the slide indicates, authentic materials, the real stuff from the target culture.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so authentic materials being movies, TV shows, films that are made by native Spanish speakers, for example, for other native Spanish speakers. So the target audience, who these materials are being created for, it will just make sure you're not getting a watered down version of the language, and it's refreshed, it's updated, it's how people are actually using it. I know for me as a French learner, looking at certain words or sentences on a page versus hearing them and how native French speakers kind of shorten and condense and throw away the negatives because that's how the language is used in real life. That will make it so much easier when you are in front of a native speaker to go, oh, that's the shortcut, or, oh, that's what I'm seeing here. So definitely want to make sure you're taking advantage of those. Clem, how can we add authentic materials to our routine? What are some good tips for engaging with different materials? Because especially for beginners, it can be a little overwhelming if you're new to the language or you're just getting into it to listen to kind of that immediate pace of speaking. So what are our tips that we like to give students?
So you can watch a show on Netflix with subtitles. Same thing with YouTube videos. Some of them already have subtitles. For songs, you can pull up the lyrics, right? And you don't have to, if you're a true beginner, your goal shouldn't be to understand everything the first time you listen to the song and be able to sing it as fast as they sing it for real. But you can pick bits and pieces, maybe the vocabulary at first, the new words that you're learning, the theme, the general theme of the song. You can even expand your vocabulary based on just one song. And little by little, as you get more comfortable with the vocabulary, the pace, the melody even, you can listen to more songs or watch more shows. If you're watching a show at first as a beginner, you can use the subtitles in your native language. But as you progress through your progress, you can switch the subtitles and have them in the target language. And then you can get rid of subtitles altogether. So there's ways to adapt, especially when there's sound to some material, ways to adapt so that it's a little less difficult for you. So you can be dealing with something authentic that somebody in the target culture is watching or listening to, but what you do with it is what you adapt. And that's exactly what we do in our classroom as well. We adapt the task that we give to our students, but we don't tweak the material itself. It's just we're less demanding with it if we're dealing with a class of beginners.
Exactly. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Clem.
Well, and with books is the one that I left aside. So you can still gain a lot from books, even though obviously, although with audiobooks, you can still listen to the language. But literally a really great tip for actually speaking, if you don't have a model, just like you have for songs or for TV shows where you can pause and literally repeat sentences. For books, the best tip I can give you is open a page randomly and start reading out loud. Even better is reading out loud in front of a mirror, which is the weirdest piece of advice that was ever given to me by a university professor back in France, whom I like enough to actually listen to. And I did it. And I actually saw an improvement in my pronunciation right away. I wish I had recordings of that because it was done with a British accent or wannabe British accent. But literally, I grabbed Harry Potter and I started reading to myself out loud, which at first was absolutely horrifying. But I forced myself to do it and I could see day after day that it was getting better. I needed to get used to the weirdness. I needed to hear it first. And after that, past that weird moment, that's where I could really notice where I was messing up and what I could improve. So super good tip.
Absolutely. And the key here, again, with a lot of what we're saying, reading out loud, making sure your mouth is moving, you are producing volume. It really is the best way to get comfortable with the language in spoken conversation. This last one here, music, this was some learning science that I was particularly very excited to come across. And really, it just shows that learning can take place through simply absorbing a variety of input. So there are two different approaches, an active approach versus a passive approach. There are benefits to just listening, absorbing the lyricism of the language through music. Your brain can actually start to pick out and recognize these certain patterns. And so with music, it's not even put it on while you're driving, put it on in your commute, while you're walking, while you're buying groceries. You'll be surprised at how words start to kind of come to the forefront the more and more you listen to them. Even if you don't necessarily know the direct translation, being able to pick apart when are the pauses, how is this pronounced, it really can take you very far in your own language learning. We do have a lot of Spotify playlists on our website. We will be sharing a link to our website too in the chat as well. But definitely go explore those playlists, put them on. The more you engage with this language, the more comfortable you'll feel using it and the better your conversation skills will become. All right, what about this one? It takes about 3 months to reach intermediate level proficiency or fluency. It takes 3 months to reach fluency. What do we think about this one? I hope this does not come as a surprise to many. Else. Yes, Clem, if you have heard this before, first of all, you're not alone. We do have a theory on where this statement came from. But Clem, tell us, how long on average does it actually take to reach an intermediate level proficiency?
It's at least 500 hours, and that's really the minimum of the minimum. Usually it's closer to 700 to reach fluency, at least intermediate proficiency. And of course it depends on the people, right? But also think of it in terms of like how many hours you can devote to it in one day, or how many minutes sometimes for some people. So it takes time. There's no secret. And for some folks, it's harder than for others. And some folks also just have less time to engage with whatever material they want to engage with.
Exactly. So we think where this, fluent in 3 months came from is actually, if you break down the 750 hours to every single day, dedicating 8 hours each day to language learning, then you would reach that benchmark hour goal. I don't think a lot of us have the luxury of being able to spend 8 hours taking on language learning as a full-time gig. We have other responsibilities, life obligations, family, work, all that good stuff. And so our tip here really is just going to be, one, don't hold yourself again to this unrealistic expectation of when you should reach a certain benchmark. It does take time. Don't give up after a month or 2 or 3 months even, because you are not going to be fluent by then. It does take time. It's a journey. It's ongoing. But don't get discouraged if you're not finding, man, I'm not picking this up super easily. It does take time. It does take dedication. So yes, another tip here, 750 hours, again, as a beginner level learner, that number can look a little daunting. What we would like to recommend to you is making sure you're diversifying your input and finding what's enjoyable to you. So if you really love film, TV, set a goal of, watching one new French film each week, or listening to music 20 minutes a day, stuff like that. But diversifying the inputs that are going in. So it's not 750 hours of just grammar or just reading or just writing, but making sure you're hitting all of those language skills: reading, writing, listening, pronunciation, and speaking, to really make sure you're exercising kind of all of the muscles it takes to be able to feel comfortable in a conversation.
Yes, and it's not 750 hours sitting down in a class, whether it's on Zoom or in person. It's 700 hours of everything. Anything you can engage with, that counts. And the more you engage with it, the faster you go.
I know Elizabeth's not here with us, but our founder of Freestyle Languages, she actually said one of her things when she first started learning French, before she taught it at the university level, was reading the backs of shampoo bottles. There is language all around you. So having that appetite, that curiosity, just that moment of thinking, where can I get this engagement? The more you're able to put that into your daily routine, the faster you will progress to your language learning goals. So be curious, stay curious, and find, as many ways to incorporate language into your daily routine if possible, as much as possible.
Cereal boxes in the chat. Yes, absolutely.
All right. Okay. How about this one? Pronunciation practice only benefits your accent. What do we think about this one, Clem?
It is absolutely false. It benefits everything. Why? Because pronunciation is the weirdest part of the language, especially taking the example of French, where it's not intuitive at all. You need to get rid of the weirdness, making weird things going with your mouth, weird sounds. You're not even sure if you're accurate. Getting rid of the weirdness of it all. Past that point, not only are you getting better because you're doing it, but you're also trying more. And so you're going to improve just faster, just by trying, just by doing it. And again, that goes back to the make mistakes, folks, because that's what it takes to make progress. So pronunciation helps, yes, your accent to sound more like a native speaker, but it would also open more doors because you're trying more. You're trying new things. And the more you do that, the faster things sound good or not to you. So it's a virtuous circle that really starts with just taking a deep breath and going for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a really great article. If you haven't read it, I would highly recommend, by Scientific American, speaking to all of these things, how to teach an old ear new tricks, because this specifically is super, super powerful for adult learners. It describes the science behind pronunciation and how it helps us tackle this oral roadblock. Like a good example I like to give is the French R. Being a native English speaker, I did not grow up with that sound. So after a certain age, it's really hard for my brain to kind of wrap my mind around how to use that sound, how to reproduce that sound. So the more I actually engage in pronunciation exercises, listening to it, repeating out loud, the better I become at saying that in conversation. And what's amazing, it's not only going to make you sound better, so more likely to be able to be understood by native speakers, you're going to be able to understand native speakers better. You're going to feel more confident because you're like, yes, I'm nailing it. But also the great thing here with pronunciation is similar to the passive listening with music. You don't have to fully understand the translation of what's in front of you to get these benefits. We do have 100% online pronunciation workshops designed to tackle the hardest sounds for native speakers to use. And it's exactly for this reason. Even if you're a total beginner, you have no prior experience, start with pronunciation, because your brain will have an easier time then retaining the language and reproducing it and using it in conversation. And that pronunciation workshop we give, it has a really good tip, like for the R, for example. R's in English, the way we move our mouth, kind of like what Clem was saying with speaking French and reading out loud, the way we say R in English, we lift our tongues up. The French R, you keep your tongue down. And that was like, I read that tip and it totally changed my life. I started practicing my French R on the planes, much to the dismay of everyone around me. They're like, what is she? Like making all these sounds to try and get that R better, but it works. It really does work, and it helps you retain the language more. So definitely, if you haven't started incorporating pronunciation into your routine as an adult, you stand to benefit so much from doing so. Of course, there is a specific way we would recommend trying to incorporate pronunciation. Clem, can you tell us about best practices here?
For students, it's really important for them to listen to themselves. It's the best way to be aware of what they're doing. We can go in and tell them, careful about this, careful about that, or you nailed this one. But if they're not aware of it first, they're not going to be able to make that connection. So, of course, now we have great tools for folks to be able to record themselves and listen to it as much as they want. So you can, grab a book and read in front of the mirror, but really record yourself, listen to it. And then while in our classes, actually, we do it on a weekly basis and students get feedback on these type of exercise. But in addition to that, we go back to recording previous recordings. We ask students to record again and see how much they've improved. Again, going back to the repetition is key, that goes for this as well. Listen to yourself, ask for another opinion if you need it, and then do it again and again and again. It can also boost you if you see that really you're improving. Again, you're triggering all sorts of good things happening. So being aware of what you do is key in language learning, specifically for pronunciation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it goes back to, not wanting to try and make a mistake. You'll think you'll sound silly, but you're not going to get better unless you allow yourself to sound a little bit silly when you're first trying. But if you keep at it, you keep going, like Clem said, repetition is so, so key to language learning. Nothing is ever one and done. It's all about reinforcing. It's a constant journey. If you've heard, I'm sure, if you don't use it, you lose it. The same thing applies here to language learning. So definitely want to make sure that you are following the best practices and that you are repeating and going back and revisiting and strengthening things as you're moving through. All right. Okay. So yes, just to recap a little bit here, I do want to make sure we have some time to answer questions. I see some in the chat. But to recap what our profile of a successful language learner really looks like is one, understanding your why. So those 500 to 750 plus hours, it can seem a little daunting, but if you stay focused on what's motivating you, what you stand to gain, the acquisition of a new language truly is a lifelong, life-changing professional and personal skill, one that you can carry with you whenever you're interacting with other people, and you never know what it might bring you. So staying really focused on what you hope to get out of this, because if you're sticking to your motivations, then you will actually stick to it. And that, again, is what sets successful language learners apart from people who are not. And those are the people who just give up and say, I can't do this. You can do this. And it's best to focus on why you are doing this to make sure you do retain the benefits. Our others, stay curious, trying to find as many opportunities as possible to incorporate your target language into your day-to-day, listening to music, films, chatting with native speakers, even practicing in restaurants. That's something one of our learners said he finally found the confidence to do after taking Spanish in high school many, many years ago. Have fun with it. It really is so, so fun to practice with other people. So stay curious. Keep your language learning mind open. Follow Facebook groups. We do have Facebook groups available too as well. Our Instagram phrase of the day is really popular. Spanish phrase of the day, French phrase of the day, Italian phrase of the day, and English phrase of the day. We do post daily words, phrases, idiomatic expressions with audio and examples. So really easy ways to make sure you are hitting your daily, I'm curious, I'm learning every single day. Number 3, check your pride at the door. This is huge. Attitude makes an incredible difference when it comes to language learning. We didn't explicitly mention it, but a growth mindset can carry you so far. So not seeing language learning as I'm either capable of this or I am not, but knowing that you can improve and that you will make mistakes and that those mistakes will propel you forward because you learn from them. So just have fun with it. Don't be too hard on yourself, and really make sure when you're showing up to practice language, you're not psyching yourself out. You are ready to practice, throw it out there, and you're not worried about sounding silly because you know that that's what it takes to improve. Lastly, be tenacious, be dedicated. It does take effort. It does take dedication to work it into your routine to make sure you are working towards those hours that you need. But whatever your goals are there, it is absolutely possible for you to learn. So we really, really hope that you all take some of these science-backed tips into your routine so you can reach your speaking goals, because that's what we want. We want everybody to go polyglot. We want people to be connecting with all people from around the world. And so we hope these tips help you do that. To that end, if you do have speaking goals, it can be hard to find all of these elements that we've spoken about in one language learning program. We know because we've looked out there. We're happy to say that we do offer all of these elements in our own language learning offerings because we, of course, want to practice what we preach. If you're tuning in today, you do actually have the opportunity to save 15% on all of our courses with code DISCOVER. And we do have, again, a link, freestylelanguages.com/discover, where you can find this offering. We have all levels of Spanish and French classes starting October 25th. This discount does expire Friday, the 22nd at 7 p.m. Central. If you have any questions about any of the courses, in terms of what content will be covered, what the scheduling is like, more specifics on our model, our flipped classroom model, which is science-backed, again, proven to give you the speaking outcomes you want, please feel free to contact us. Again, my name is Mackenzie. Clem is here as well, and our emails you'll see on screen, along with a phone number that you can call, you can text, you can message us on our website. But we definitely, if you have language goals, we know we can help you reach them. So we hope to see you online. With that, I'll go ahead and stop screen sharing if I can and turn to the chat, see if we have any questions, particularly for Clem, who is a language learning expert. So yes, please send us in the chat any questions that you may have. And I'm gonna scroll through and catch up too as well. Let's see.
I do see a question about getting full professional training. I mean, I don't have any tip particularly for, teachers to get trained on everything we've talked about today. What I can say though is that we train all of our teachers to do exactly that. And that's the reason we went all in training, is because we found out that a lot of teachers teach quote unquote the old way, myself included, by the way. Some of this stuff is fairly new to me. The pronunciation also is the newly added feature that we added less than 2 years ago. I think it just over a year ago, actually, that really the emphasis on the pronunciation workshop that we have, the pronunciation portfolio that we have. So we think we do it best, is my answer. So I have yet to encounter a training program that is as all-encompassing as ours. So.
Mm-hmm. And yes, Clem, we do, like Clem said, we do train all of our instructors before they get in the freestyle classroom, because these methodologies, they're not practiced frequently or commonly. So we do have plans to actually offer our teaching training program to other instructors, whether you plan on teaching with freestyle or not, very soon. So stay tuned to our website as well, because it could be that you could benefit from some of the methods that we actually incorporate, the guided induction, all these things that we've talked about today. And that actually is also what prompted Elizabeth Mack, again, founder of Freestyle Languages, to start Freestyle Languages. She herself was a university instructor getting in trouble for bringing in films and TV shows to the classroom, for focusing more on conversation as opposed to exams. She thought, wait a minute, there's a disconnect here between what is successful and what we are doing. And so that's why we're here today.
I see a question about grammar teaching, more context-based. So to teach grammar, we use guided induction, which basically, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but basically we expose the students to the new features, and very concretely on a slide, it would be highlighted, right? And so at first, though, we would focus on the material that they already know, and we would have conversation. And then little by little, we would guide the students' attention toward what is highlighted. And we would ask them literally what's going on. And maybe that looks like looking at two statements side by side, or comparing to something they just learned a week before. So it's really eliciting answers from students, making them be part of the language learning process. And once they get it, we also use very little meta language, as little as we can, because it throws people off more than it helps them. And once we're all on the same page, we know what's going on in a sentence, in a paragraph, then we move on. We run with it. We get it. It's just a matter of practicing it. Yes, we will make mistakes. That's a given from the beginning. But they figured it out. We have not delivered the rules to them. And immediately after they figured it out, we're already using it in context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this question. And to follow up on what Clem's saying, again, putting my learner hat on, we watch this prep lesson video. It's about 10 to 12 minutes before we actually log on for the class or engage with other things. And it's exactly that. It's giving us real life examples of the grammar concepts we want to cover, but without introducing the conversation first. And then once we watch that video, we see the patterns, we have questions as learners. Why is this working a certain way? Then we come to class, we're given the rules, we're able to practice, and we have just enough information to come where we're really at the point in the classroom reinforcing through conversation practice. So it's a really, really powerful and effective method.
Yeah, we never show up, for a lesson or saying, okay, today, stem changing verbs. Because that doesn't help anyone. It's like, what is that? We have also folks who are like, well, what's a verb again? Thinking, oh, high school, oh my gosh, I remember that word, oh my gosh. So little meta language, examples first, and then we walk through whatever we need to walk through.
I also want to highlight in response, Suzanne, to your question, at the early intermediate level, we actually have theme-based courses for this exact reason, because the science behind learning in a context, within a real life context, and in the sense of you can apply this to a real life conversation, is so much more effective than learning kind of in an isolated manner, saying, here's the grammar chart that you will learn. No, that's not as effective. But saying, here are the things you can learn to talk about. I'll use gustar, the Spanish verb, as an example. We don't say, here are, what are the term for those verbs, Clem, if you know? The AR, we just call them AR verbs.
As far as I know, yes, but I'm only an intermediate Spanish speaker, so I'm not the expert.
But we come in saying, all right, let's discuss, for example, in our food themed course, the verb gustar, not in the sense that here's how you conjugate it, but what kind of foods do you like? What kind of foods do you dislike? What is your routine? What do you like to cook? So you're coming in practicing within the context of this real world application. And that does wonders for how your brain retains what it's focusing on. So we absolutely, yes, focus more on context than grammar. Other question, any plans to add other languages other than Spanish and French? We actually do teach English to native Spanish speakers through our corporate language at work program across a variety of industries, construction, user experience, government as well. We have taught Italian in the past, and we are reconsidering adding Italian back to our repertoire. Of course, we have lots of plans to add lots of languages, but we have to take it one step at a time. So right now, Spanish and French and English through our language at work program are the focus, but absolutely we would love to add more languages. Our appetite for learning and for growing and connecting cannot be satiated. So yes, we do plan on adding more in the future. All right. Any other questions about language learning tips, maybe something you've specifically struggled with that you'd like some guidance on? Let us know in the chat. If not, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate everybody tuning in today. There's Ashley. I wasn't sure if she'd pop back up. Welcome back.
Hello. Yeah, I so appreciate all of the dialogue here and the thoughtful sort of questions. I was very much going through each of the myths about language learning and just reliving some of my high school experience. And I so appreciate the attention to, one, the ways in which we're typically presented with a second language, and the way that Freestyle seems to kind of take that information, right, finding people where they are, which oftentimes, especially in the United States, is you have some high school experience. It probably was presented in a way that maybe didn't make it more accessible for you to speak a language, but don't let that be the barrier. It seems so much of language acquisition, language learning is really like comes down to, can you get over that bit of awkwardness, Clem, like you mentioned, when you're especially in that early phase, you can just keep pushing through. There are actually ways that make it easier to learn, more accessible to speak, and more enjoyable to go through the entire process, which is for so many of us, like that's the thing that maybe is preventing us from doing it. So really appreciate that. And also it looks like we've got a lot of great comments from folks here about the process of working with other language learners. So, Suzanne and folks who are teaching languages themselves, being able to focus on the learning theory rather than the mechanics of grammar or language. I'm with you, Clem. I'm a grammar nerd, but my background is in learning theory and pedagogy and understanding how people actually can absorb and really cultivate skills. So it's great to see how much of this you all are offering in the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. Definitely for those of you Ava, I know that you mentioned wondering if you'll have access to the presentation. Yes, we will send you a replay so you'll have, if you came in late, you'll be able to catch those first few myths and learn how Freestyle approaches the language learning process there. And I posted the link both to the Spanish 1A course and also to Freestyle's entire course catalog. So definitely check out their website. Make good use of that discount that they have on offer, and let us know how it goes for you. Come back. Maybe we'll do some additional events and dive a little bit more into some other language learning. Maybe we'll go back to that hashtag wine the ultimate. What's the rest of it?
Wine the great fluency builder.
The great fluency builder. Yes. Having spoken my most cohesive Spanish in Argentina over some very I can say, yeah, anecdotally, I don't know what the data says, but anecdotally I am evidence of that of that science, so I appreciate that. Look forward to, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that really is the takeaway, is that if you were doubting whether or not you can learn a language, our students are from young professionals to retirees, switching back and forth from our intermediate and advanced Spanish and French classes. It's never too late to start. You can do it. So we hope these tips make it a little bit easier for you and that you can enjoy, just the benefits that language learning brings to your life. So thank you so much for everyone's time today.
Love it. Yes, thank you, audience. Great to have all of you from all over the world. Clem, Mackenzie, terrific having both of you here today. Thank you so much for your time and generosity and your wisdom. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. A bientôt.
Take care, everyone.
A plus.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.